Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone in today's class for the first intermediate grade. Our textbook is Super Goal 2 and today we will cover Let's Celebrate Form, Meaning and Function. This lesson will be presented by me, teacher Mazen Harbi, and the sign language by Mr. Fawaz Al-Agil. So let's begin. Our objectives in today's lesson, we hope that at the end of this lesson, you will be able to differentiate between must and must not and should not in use. Before we do this, let's make quick revision on our last lesson. Last lesson, we have taken this interesting exercise about crosswords, and we said that you have 22 words. Try to find them, and when you do, you will see, just highlight the remaining letters and you will see hidden message. And we have did just like this, and we have found the 12 words that are across, as we can see here. And here are the list of these 12 words, and also 10 words that are down. It means those in the green line. And also we said that the words we have come up with is Let's Celebrate, the title of our unit. And also we had another exercise where I ask you to read this invitation about the graduation party and try to elicit some information. And we said that by looking at this invitation card, we can select some of the information. Like, for example, who is this graduation for? We said it's for Ahmed Al Faisal. And where is it going to be? We said it will be in Oasis Restaurant. And when? It will be on Saturday, May 15th. And it is a graduation party. So here is the information that we can know from looking at this card. And also at the end, we have decided to choose a celebration, any celebration we can think of, or any holiday. And we said that just write about it. Try to write about it. And you write, for example, the date, the clothing, the food, and the special events or the practices. And you can also use vocabularies from this unit. So design a similar invitation card to this, and with whatever celebration you want or whatever holiday you choose, and then write these details, and you can share it with your friends or family member. And also at the end, we said that in order to know more about celebrations, to know more about practices on holidays, you can research celebration in another country and present your findings to the class. So you can just read about it using the internet or ask people around you about the different celebrations or practices in different countries. Now, as for our lesson today we have a very important lesson about using two important verbs. The first one is must and the second one is should. We usually, must and should, we use them and they call the modal verbs. The form of the modal verbs does not change according to the subject. And usually after the modal verbs must and should, we use the base form of the main verb. So whether we use must or we use should, the subject remains the same. We don't make any changes to the subject. So no matter what the subject we have here, I or he, she, it, you, we, they, and we use after it either must and should, the verb that comes after must and should do not change. The same as those subject pronouns. There is no changes we can make when we use must or should. So for example, we can say, I must sleep early. I must sleep early because I have an exam tomorrow. Or we can say, I should sleep early because I have a flight. So here you can use any of these subject pronouns. No changes are required here. And after this, you can use either must and should. And the verb, the base verb. What do you mean by the word the base verb? It means that you use the same verb. You don't add anything. You don't add ing, you don't add s. You use the verb as it is. So now let's talk further details about must and should and when can we use each one of these verbs. So Let's begin with must. We use must or mustn't to talk about obligations and rules. To talk about obligations, the things that are very important and very necessary that we need to do. For example, must expresses obligation or something that is very important to do, so there is no chance. For example, when we say that I must go to school, this is very important that you go to school. Or when you say, I must obey the speeding limit, it's very important that you obey the speeding limit. So must talks about the obligation, the things that are very necessary to do. And also must not or mustn't, in short, means that something is prohibited. Something is not allowed. For example, you must not park at this corner. Parking here is not allowed, is prohibited. You must not, for example, you must not smoke because smoking is prohibited, is not allowed. So must all about obligation, all about the necessary or important things that you need to do. Now, let's talk further details about must. So here, we use must or must not to talk about obligation and rules. What do you mean by obligation? Obligation are the things that are very important to do and very important to commit to. For example, when we say you must go to school, because school is very important, it's very necessary thing to do. Also, when we said that you must obey the speeding limit, it is very important, it's very necessary that you obey the speed limit. Of course, if you don't, then you may have accident. So this is why we said these talks about obligations and rules that are very important. So must expresses the obligation or something that is very important to do. And the other one, must not or mustn't, means that something is prohibited or it is not allowed. For example, you must not smoke. You must not smoke. Why? Because smoking is prohibited, is not allowed. Also, if we said that you must not park your car here. Why? Because parking here is prohibited, is not allowed. So as we said, must is all about obligation, all about rules that people need to follow. So let's take further example on this. Here, number one, we must follow the rules. We must follow the rules. This is very important, to follow the rules and to obey them. He must stop at the traffic light. So when you see a traffic light, this is very important that you stop at the traffic light when they are red. So he must stop at the traffic light. Here, you must not or you mustn't talk during the test. It is not allowed to talk during the test. This is a prohibited, something that is not allowed. And this is why we use you mustn't or you must not. Also, they must not park on the sidewalk. They must not park on the sidewalk. Sidewalk are for people who want to walk. So it is not allowed. It's prohibited if you want or if you decided to park at the sidewalk. So again, must is all about obligation, is all about rules and the things that you need to follow and you need to obey. Now, let's talk about should. Should here is lighter than must, so we use should to give suggestions and advice. So when you use any expression or sentence with should, the person you talk to, either he can accept it or not. So there is an option when you use should. But when you use must, there is no option. There is no choice. He must obey or he must do that thing. But when you use should, then it means that he has a choice. So we use should or shouldn't to give advice or make suggestion. That might be important, but it gives the listener the choice to take the advice or not. So there is a freedom here. There is a choice for that person, whether to accept this advice or not, or accept that suggestion or not. So there is a chance. For example, who should I invite to the celebration? This is in question. Who should I invite to the celebration? Why I use the should here? Because I have a choice whether I invite someone or don't. Also, we should donate to the poor. We should donate to the poor. So this is a nice suggestion, a nice advice. We should. So it's up to the listeners who wants to accept or who are willing to accept this advice or not. Also here, they should not eat junk food. They should not eat junk food. So this is a suggestion. He suggested that these people should not eat junk food, and it's up to them whether to accept this or not. And also, she shouldn't spend all her money. She should not spend all her money. It means that she has a choice whether to spend all her money or not. So this is the difference between must and should. Must, it means you have no choice, you must do it, and should, it means you have a choice. You either want to do it or you want to do it or not. So there, this is the difference between should and must. So this is to sum it up. Again, must and should, we call them a modal verbs, and we use must or mustn't to talk about obligations and rules. And also we use, like for example, we must follow the rules, he must stop at the traffic light, or when we say you mustn't talk during the test, or they mustn't park on the sidewalk. Also with using should or shouldn't, this is to give suggestions and advices. For example, who should I invite, or we should donate to the poor. And as we said, that these are the difference between them. And again, must is stronger than should, and it has more formal tune, more formal tune. For example, when you go to a public place, you'll see some signs over there said that you must not park here, or you must drive or obey the speeding limit, or you must fasten your seat belt. So usually must has a formal tone, but it is much stronger than should. So now let's take an exercise, and this one I think it's very important one. Change the imperatives to sentences with must or must not. So here on the left you'll see imperatives, instructions. Sentences feel like someone is asking you to do so. So we need to change that form of these sentences and change it to write sentence of our own, but using must or must not. For example, be kind to your neighbors. Be kind to your neighbors. So this is an imperative. How can you change it to make it a sentence with the must? You can say, we must be kind to our neighbors. Let's try to answer the first one. The first one says, do your homework tonight. Do your homework tonight. And start with the subject I. So how would we form this sentence? We said always that we always start with the subject pronoun. After the subject pronouns comes the modal verb, in this case is must, and also after must will be the verb, And so the verb here we have is do. So the sentence will be, I must do my homework tonight. I must do my homework tonight. So let's try to answer number 2. Don't be late for class. Don't be late for class. So the subject we should start with here is you. And pay attention that this imperative has a negative. Do not. So here, if we want to use the modal verb, it must be the modal verb with the negative, which is not. So the answer will be, you mustn't be late for class. You mustn't be late for class. Number 3, ask the teacher for help. Ask the teacher for help. So we start with the subject she. And so what should comes after she? Excellent. She must ask the teacher for help. She must ask the teacher for help. And number 4, don't sit on the desks. Don't sit on the desk. So here we have students. We need to start the subject to start with the students. So, and there is a negative here, and we started with the students, so we will use the modal verb that has a negative form, which is must not. Student mustn't sit on the desks. And number 5, share your toys. Share your toys. And the subject we should use here is the children. So, the children, very good, the children must share their toys. And number 6, don't eat snacks before dinner. Don't eat snacks before dinner. So, the subject we should use here is he. And since we have a negative here, then we'll use the modal verb that has a negative form, which is must not. He mustn't eat snacks before dinner. And number 7, send the invitations today. Send the invitations today. So the subject we should use here is we, and the answer will be we must send the invitation today. Number 8, don't use fireworks indoors. And since here there is a negative here in don't, then the subject we should use, or the modal verb that we should use, should have a negative form, which is you must not use fireworks indoors. Now, so here you have the answers of the first exercise. Now, let us move on in the second exercise, and in this one we're going to complete it with should or shouldn't and the verb in parentheses. So as we said that whether we use must or whether we use should, the verb that comes after them do not change. We don't make any changes to the verb. So for example, look at Yahya. Yahya's tooth hurts. So what would you suggest to Yahya? What is the advice that you would suggest to Yahya? We would say to him that he should see a dentist. Yahya should go and see a dentist because, as you can see here, his tooth hurts. So, number 2, Fatima wants to lose weight. So, she should, very good, she shouldn't eat ice cream. She shouldn't eat ice cream. Note here that see, the verb see is the same, the verb eat is the same. So whether we use should or should not, we don't make any changes to the verb. Number 3, the children do not feel well. They plan to school today. So now we want to give them advice or suggestion. So since they do not feel well, so we would say that they should not go to school. They should go to hospital. They should not go to school. They should go to hospital. And number 4, if you don't understand, you plank the teacher to explain it. When you are in class and you don't understand anything, so what you should do? Very good. You should ask the teacher to explain. You should ask the teacher to explain. And number 5, the parade starts at 11 o'clock. So what time we leave? What time, and the subject we, and then the verb leave. And here we want to make question. So what time should we leave? What time should we leave? Excellent. And number 6, drivers plank cell phones when they are driving. And here we want to say using, because of the verb. Using cell phone is something that is not good. So here we're going to make an advice to them. We said drivers should not use cell phones when they are driving. And number 7, I have an idea. We plank the room with balloons. And the verb here we need to use is decorate. So here we should say that we should decorate the room with balloons. And number 8, thanks for inviting me. What blank? How about a cake? So here we have the subject I and the verb bring. So we would say, what should I bring? What should I bring? It means what are the things that I need to bring with me. So here you go. Here are the answers of exercise B. And now, the last exercise we have is I would like you to work in groups of 4. Plan an end of the year celebration for your class. Think about the date, the time, the place, and the food and drinks and the invitations and guests and decorations and activities. So everything that relates to a celebration, just think of it. And write simple sentences like should or shouldn't or must or mustn't. For example, think about the time. When should we have the celebration? In which day? On exactly at what time exactly? So you can write these details in here. And also, where should we have it? Here you need to think of the place because this is an important information and you need to write it down here in this invitation card. And the last thing is, should we have decorations at all? So here you can discuss with your friends about a decoration or what is the proper decorations that you need to make or to put at the celebrations. So design a nice card like this. Write all the details that you like about any celebration as we have mentioned here, the place, the time, the date, the decorations, and share it with your friends. And now we have reached the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.